Okay, friends, this is day 31 of our online Bible study in the Gospel of John. And today we're starting a new story, a new part of John. And I'm just going to take us through the very, very brief introduction, just a few thoughts on the first three verses. So here they are. After the two days, he left for Galilee. So this is after spending a couple of days with the Samaritans. You remember from our story from last week. He left for Galilee, so he completes his journey up north. Then a parenthetical statement. Now Jesus himself had pointed out that a prophet has no honor in his own country. When he arrived in Galilee, the Galileans welcomed him. They had seen all that he had done in Jerusalem at the festival of the Passover, for they also had been there. So the parenthetical statement is what I really want to hone in on to kind of set us up for this week, because we're going to see some cool stuff this week. So his own country is the country of Israel, which includes Galilee and Jerusalem, but it doesn't include Samaria. You could look at a map there. If you draw a straight line between Jerusalem and Galilee, Jerusalem kind of in the center of Israel and Galilee in the north, it would go through Samaria. But that area there, it's kind of its own country. And it used to be a part of Israel, but at the time of Jesus, there's been a lot of tension that we won't go into all of today between the Jews and the Samaritans. And the Samaritans have a lot of similar beliefs to the Jews, but you kind of see it as like a family feud. There's been a vicious family feud here, and they've really separated. And part of what's happening with the woman at the well story is Jesus bringing these families, like this one family, these two separate parts of it, back together. So what's this whole deal about? He had pointed out that a prophet has no honor in his own country. So he's traveling from a part of his own country in Jerusalem up to a part of his own country in Galilee. Then he goes through this part of the region, Samaria, that's not a part of his own country, but it's kind of like an estranged family's country. So there's all kinds of like loaded imagery here. Why does he say that a prophet's not welcomed in their or honored in their own country? Well, what's happened in Samaria? In Samaria, they've welcomed him in. He stays for 2 days, and in fact, they want him to stay longer. What we'll see later on in chapter 6 is that he travels to a land that isn't a Jewish area, and they want to make him their king. So when he's in Samaria, when he's in the Decapolis, which is where we're going to get to in chapter 6, when he's there, these people are welcoming him. They want him to stay. And here in Galilee, they welcome him with open arms. But what we know, if we know the end of the story, and what we'll certainly see continue to play out, is that in the areas that are thoroughly Jewish areas, his own country, his own people, he's rejected. And I mean, we even see that all the way back in the prologue, in the first little bit of John. Go back and reread that this week, and you'll see that his people reject him. Jesus knows that. So I think that's what's happening here, is that a prophet is not welcomed in their own country, but that's juxtaposed to him just coming out of this time with the Samaritans, where he was welcome. Why is that? I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of reflection that we could do on that, even just in our own day. Why is it that it's the people that we're the closest to that we're the nastiest to? Why is it it's the people that we're the closest to that we take the most for granted? There's just something about our human nature that with our own family, with our own people, with the people closest to us, are the people that we can easily take for granted, and the people that we kind of take our frustration or anger out on. It's part of this too, that the familiarity would lead them to believe that, he can't be that special. We live in a part of the country where there are a lot of kind of hometown heroes, and they're honored. You look at the sports figures that have come out of high schools around here, and they're honored in the sense that we respect them, but they're also just like real people. They're not just these kind of celebrity athlete types that we see on the screen. We recognize that they're real people. And those of you who went to high school with these folks, you know them in a more nuanced way than just what's presented on the TV. And I think that's part of it too, is that what we want in Jesus, what they wanted like a Messiah or Savior, someone kind of separate, distant, that Jesus is too familiar. And keep in mind that familiarity for people who knew Jesus would have also meant that they knew about kind of his background, that he was born under questionable circumstances. Most people didn't buy into this whole virgin birth thing. I mean, like he was, conceived in kind of an odd way, that his mom and his dad weren't married, and he likely was rejected because of all of that. And how familiar Jesus was to some of these people would have made them less likely to believe that he was who he said that he was. So to kind of wrap it up, here's just a question. What good gifts are right under your nose? You know what I mean? Like what are some of the good things in your life that maybe you're so familiar with that it's easy just to take them for granted? And get past like the simple stuff. I mean, certainly there's something to be said for having a roof over our head, food on the table, family, friends, all those things. But really dig down deep. What are some of the blessings that God has given me that are so close to me that I forget that they're even blessings? That I don't honor God for these gifts because I've become so familiar with them. So I think as we start this reading this week, maybe that's a place to be. What are some of the gifts that are good gifts but that are so close to me that it's easy for me to forget about them? So God bless you, friends. We've got some good stuff this week. I'll see you later this week.